Hi, in today's video, we'll talk about one very important aspect of supply chain, which is around managing warehouse transitions. Now, this is the Achilles heel of making any transition to a newer partner, because if the initial transition goes wrong, it's extremely hard for both the partners to forge a deep relationship and make the supply chain association successful. Over the 100 supply chains that we have handled in last few years, what we have learned is that there are 10 mantras to really make any warehouse transition successful. If you follow these 10 basic principles of warehouse transition, it is a very high probability that transition will be extremely successful. The first and the foremost is around making the operations overlap between the new and the old warehouse. Typically, one of the mistakes that we have seen partners doing is that they don't keep enough buffer or continuity of operations between the old and the new warehouse. Therefore, there's always an extremely stretched timeline in terms of completing the transition process. So depending upon the scale of transition, I think 1 to 2 weeks is an extremely important timeline where you should have overlap of operations between both the warehouses. The second important mantra is handling of goods at the time of transfer of stock in the older warehouse. This is one of the most important aspects of getting the warehouse transitions right. In our experience, we have seen sometimes at the origin warehouse, goods are not packed properly, the cartons don't have packaging slips, goods are mixed, many of the goods are sometimes not accounted for. These are regular operational issues and for many of the brands, and they can be easily handled in an ongoing operational scenario or a business as usual scenario. However, these very same issues become extremely hard to handle in a transition scenario. So it is very important that at the origin warehouse from where the goods are being transferred, there is a proper packaging of material that happens. There's no mixing of goods, at least to the extent as much as possible. There are box-wise labels for each and every packaging that is there. There's a proper loading and handling of the goods that happens, because if there's a transit damage that happens, then it leaves a bad taste on both the sides. And while we do all of this, sometimes the basics like e-way bills are forgotten, right? And it leads to some certain GST issues. And one very small but critical aspect is at the time of origin of goods is many times, as a part of ongoing operations, brands keep unaccounted goods there which are damaged or they're waiting for liquidation. These are the goods which are typically out of your systems, right? Or ERPs or WMSs. You have certain unplanned goods that were not there as a part of your transition planning, or they have come at the last moment. So ensure these unaccounted, damaged, unplanned stocks are also factored in as a part of your transition. So I think this is the second critical aspect, which was around handling of goods at the time of transfer of stock. The third mantra for getting the transition right is around having a day-wise transition planning. Any planning that does not, or rather which is not broken down at a day level is very hard to stick to in a real operation scenario. I think defining day-wise throughput handling capacity at the destination warehouse and the origin warehouse, which is the older warehouse, is extremely critical. The second element is build the inwards volumes gradually. If you can take an inward of 100 units in any given day, don't take 100 units on day 0 or day 1. So start with 50% of your capacity, go to 75%, and on the third day, you should go to the 100% capacity. This is to take care of certain teething problems that typically happen when the first inwards come, right? So this is a very critical third aspect of ensuring that incoming goods are handled well. The build-up is very important. The fourth, fifth, and sixth, the three aspects that I'm going to talk about now, they're around managing dry runs. So dry run is a military terminology where it talks about just going through the entire process in a managed environment, or not a real life environment. Just like we have a dry run for a Republic Day parade or a dry run for a wartime scenario. Similarly, in a warehousing context, going through 3 dry runs is extremely important. The first one is technology systems dry run, right? Some very simple things like creation of the node for the new warehouse in your warehouse management system, creation of the warehousing rules for the people there, right? Defining the roles and responsibilities so that there's no data, pilferage happens at the new or the older warehouse. Ensuring that the entire technology dry run for the inward process, how the purchase order is created, how the goods are taking inwards, then outward, and the return process should also be done as a part of the technology dry run. So this is the first and foremost, the first dry run out of the three. The second dry run is actual goods transfer dry run. So this is the logistics dry run between the old warehouse and the new warehouse. Wherever possible, if it's business feasible in terms of the cost, a proper vehicle dry run should be conducted to measure the actual time taken per vehicle between the two warehouses, to ensure that there are no issues with no entries or any other regulatory aspects, to ensure there is a proper dock management at the old warehouse and the new warehouse. If the dock levelers are required, they are in place. So I think logistics dry run is very, very important, because in your day-wise planning, you have factored a certain number of vehicles per day, 20, 30, 40 vehicles a day. And if the logistics dry run does not prove those timelines, it becomes very hard to stick to the transition timeline. So that is the second aspect of the dry run. The third dry run that we talk about is end-to-end operations dry run. During this end-to-end operations dry run, basically what we do is that we ensure that all the key processes for inwards, outwards, and returns are done as if they were done in a real scenario. So we'll take the goods as inwards, we'll do proper quality check, quantity check, do the proper put away. On the outward side, do the picking, quality check again, packaging, make the goods dispatch ready. Actually, ensure in the dry run the goods are picked by a courier partner if required be, right? So the end-to-end operational dry run is a third of the dry run. The first dry run was technology dry run. The second dry run was around your end-to-end ops dry run, and the third dry run was the logistics dry run, right? So these are the three dry runs that are very, very important. The seventh mantra for getting the transition right is around training. Always underplayed. But I think training of the new warehouse staff, especially on the tech systems and on the SOPs, is extremely critical for the transition to be successful. Going through at least a minimum of 3 training sessions, right, where we have proper performance assessment built in is very, very critical for a transition to be successful. Many a times, your warehouse might be operating on your WMS, but in some cases you might be operating on a third-party WMS or ERP. So the training on the third-party systems even becomes more critical in such scenarios. The 8th mantra for getting the warehousing transition right is around buffer capacity. So build buffer capacity. All said and done in a highly intense environment of warehouse transition, where sometimes millions of goods are being transferred over a 2 weeks or a 1 week window. It is just obvious to sort of foresee and preempt that some people will fall sick. Some people will get tired and would want a week off, or at least not a week off, a day off or half a day off, right? So, and there will be unplanned things that will happen, right? You wanted to have 6 docks functional. For some reason, you only have 5 docks at hand. You wanted inwards of certain number of vehicles day after day. For a particular reason, there was a vehicle breakdown. On the next day, you have more vehicles. You expected a put-away efficiency of certain number of put-aways per hour, but actually on ground, the put-away efficiency is 10% lesser. So there will be various events that will all accrue up to 10 to 20% of extra capacity that you will need if you want to complete the transition in a time-bound and efficient manner. So creating at least a 20 to 25% buffer capacity is a good gold standard in terms of being successful in the warehouse transition. The 9th mantra that one could look at is around the outward dry run, or the supervised outwards as we call it, right? The first few outwards for 1 to 2 weeks, or first 20, 30 outwards are very critical outwards for any brand. Ensuring there is a peak accuracy, there is a dispatch accuracy, there is a documentation accuracy is extremely critical to get the outward process right. So ensure that there is enough supervision that's built into the first few outwards or the first few days of the outwards. And the last but not the least, or the 10th mantra, is always, like everything in life, have a backup planning. So, and in this backup also, what we have learned from our experience of handling close to 100 supply chains is that don't ever plan your Sunday working on the first 2 Sundays. It is like your buffer capacity as well as a backup plan. The first 2 Sundays you should keep as a backup. Don't make that into your original plan of handling the transition, because you should use these 2 days to catch up if there is some lag in your transition, also to stabilize the processes, to ensure people don't fall sick, right? For trainings, etc. So we should not try to overdo and build a transition plan covering all the 7 days. Many a times brands really push for it, and the logistics partners, they are not able to push back because they don't have the right reasons. But I am sure if you explain it using this narrative, saying that you need that time to stabilize what you've done in the 6 days, you need this time to give a break to your team so that your team doesn't fall sick and you have continuity, you need this time to train your team, trust me, your brand partners will be more than happy to support you. Also, the second part of the backup planning is to ensure that you should have a shift planning should you need for 2 shifts as well as three shifts. In transitions, as I said, sometimes even though you're planning the buffer capacity, even though you've looked at other aspects, unexpected requirements do come. So if that were to happen, then you should be ready with a 2 and a 3 shift plan that can move into motion very, very quickly. So I think these are the 10 mantras that we have learned from our experience of managing almost 100 transitions so far. Do share if you have something to add. Thank you.